Hello, my name is Spencer Judd, and thank you for taking the time to look into some of this research that I'll be presenting today. It's entitled Personal and Political Ideologies to the Pandemic Response, Intricacies in the COVID-19 Era. So to begin here in the introduction, COVID-19 is caused by the severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2. Per the CDC, symptoms of COVID-19 include fever, cough, shortness of breath, fatigue, loss of taste or smell, and sore throat. At the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the United States government took precautions to curb the pandemic, including travel bans and passing the CARES Act designed to mitigate economic hardship. However, racially minoritized groups maintained that the CARES Act stimulus was insufficient aid for minorities who face systemic inequalities before the pandemic. How an individual views the pandemic and pandemic-related changes is an important aspect of socio-political ideologies. Few studies examine how political ideologies and the experience of racial inequalities influence perceptions about the government's pandemic response. This study aimed to explore perceptions about the government's role in addressing economic hardship incurred by the COVID-19 pandemic and how they are differed by racial ideologies and personal characteristics. This study focused on individuals' personal beliefs about the government's contribution to alleviating economic hardship for people of all races during the COVID-19 pandemic. Data came from the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research database. Interviewers collected cross-sectional survey data from 1,030 respondents ages 18 years and over. Data were collected from March 3rd, 2020 to March 31st, 2020. Variables in the survey included socio-demographic factors, personal attitudes related to COVID-19, and how the government responses toward alleviating economic suffering by political beliefs. So to introduce some of the variables and the methods, we have the PollGov, which was used to measure an individual's political opinion about the government, GovResponse, which assessed an individual's opinion about the government's responses to COVID-19, and also PollRace, which measured which of two sentiments regarding race most closely align with the respondent's belief. So as we get into the statistical analysis of how this was all done, multiple methods were used. First, descriptive statistics were used to describe the respondent's age, sex, income, education level, ethnicity, and racial identities. A chi-square test was used to test whether political ideologies differed significantly by race attitudes and test for significant differences between the respondents' personal and political ideologies about government responsibilities, and the respondents' racial identities. Additionally, bivariate analyses were conducted to test the differences between poll race and demographic characteristics. And finally, logistic regression analyses were performed to independently examine PollGov and GovResp association with poll race, controlling for significant demographic characteristics. So as all of those variables were considered, of the 1,030 respondents, it consisted of 47.5% male and 52.5% were female, with about 1.7% of data that was missing. A larger proportion of Hispanic Latino than non-Hispanic Latino believed that the government is wasteful and inefficient. On average, older individuals, typically above 51.81 years old, believe that Blacks who can't get ahead in this country are mostly responsible for their condition. In comparison, individuals who are younger on average, typically beneath 46 years old, believe that this is caused by racial discrimination. Also, almost 60% of females indicated that the government had not done enough in response to COVID-19. Approximately 5% of individuals felt that the government's pandemic response was excessive. After adjusting for demographic characteristics, those who believe Blacks cannot get ahead due to racial discrimination exhibited 92% greater odds of believing that the government has not done enough than doing too much in responding to COVID-19. So taking a look here at some of our tables here, moving into our demographic characteristics, we can see the 52.5% female and 47.5% male responders. And those are broken down further into ethnicity, race, marital status, education, and income. Next, on Table 2, we see the poll gov responses. Table 3, the demographics of the poll race responses. Table 4, the demographics by gov responses. And we can also see here in Table 5, the description of personal ideologies. So in discussing the results of these, of everything that was considered, two key findings emerged. First was the government's overall response was viewed unfavorably, with only 40% of the sample group reporting that the government responded correctly, and 54% responding that the government is almost always wasteful and inefficient. Differences in racial attitudes significantly influenced attitudes about the government's pandemic response. So implications from this study, while COVID-19 may affect subpopulations differently, a greater awareness that racial attitude shapes opinion can guide those planning prevention and intervention strategies. Broad coalitions that involve community representatives and leaders can help tailor governmental responses that fit the communities where racial and minority groups live, work, learn, play, and worship. So in conclusion, this study found that only 40% of the participants reported that the government responded correctly to the pandemic, with 54% responding that the government is almost always wasteful and inefficient. However, differences emerged by ethnicity and racial attitudes, with those expressing that discrimination is a factor in Blacks getting ahead, holding more negative views of the government's response. Understanding this perspective can help develop messaging and strategies that fit communities where racial and minority groups live. In conclusion, we would sincerely like to thank the Clinical Outcomes Research and Education at Roseman University of Health Sciences College of Dental Medicine for the strong support of this study. And these additionally are our references. Thank you for taking the time. Have a great day.